Hello, this is Mrs. Taylor, and I'm just going to walk you through how to solve one-step equations. So the idea is if we're asked to solve this for A, we need to use inverse operations to undo what is happening to A. In this equation, a 1 is being added to A, so the inverse of that would be to subtract 1. And an equation needs to stay balanced. So whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract a 1 not only from the left side over here, but also from the right side. Now what happens over here is 1 minus 1 is 0, and A plus 0 is just A. Over here, negative 16 minus 1, that's negative 17, and so A equals negative 17. So that's how I isolated that variable using inverse operations. What if we had R minus 10 equals negative 29? Well, in this one, the variable is R, and they're subtracting 10 from R. So the inverse of that would be to add 10. And remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So when I add 10 to the left side of my equal sign of the equation, I have to add it to the right. Negative 10 plus 10, that equals 0. Negative 29 plus 10 is negative 19. R plus 0 is just R, so R would equal negative 19. So that's how I isolate the variable if it has a number being added to it or subtracted. Now in this problem we have 4p equals 20, and there's nothing between the 4 and the p, and so what we've learned is that means 4 times p. So in this problem, the inverse of multiplying by 4 would be to divide by 4. So to undo what is happening to the variable p, I would need to divide by 4. Now, remember, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So if I divide by 4 on this left side, I have to divide by 4 on the right. Now 4 divided by 4 is just 1. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And then 1 times p just leaves me with p. So now I've succeeded in isolating the variable and I've solved the equation. Now this one is the one that people get nervous about because it's got a fraction. You have to remember, a fraction is just division. All this means is n divided by 6. The inverse of division is multiplying. So if n is being divided by 6, all I have to do is multiply by 6. Now I'm going to write this with parentheses because it will help me with future problems that are more complicated. So get in the habit of when you multiply both sides of the equation by a number, just put each side of the equation in parentheses like I did here and put the number that you're multiplying by out front. It will help you in the long run. So 6 times 19, that would be 114. And then I want to go through the steps of what happens on this side. So 6 is the same thing as 6 over 1. And so when I multiply this out, I multiply across the top and across the bottom. That's what happens when you multiply fractions. And so the result would be 6n over 6. And then 6 divided by 6 is just 1. And 1 times n is just n. So now I've isolated the variable. N equals 114. So that is how I would use inverse operations in this situation where the variable is being divided. The inverse would be to multiply both sides by the denominator.